Welcome to the course on the book Evolution in Two Worlds. This book was authored by the spirit author André Luiz, and the mediums of the book were Waldo Vieira and Francisco Cândido Xavier. This book is through a series of other books under the title Life in the Spirit Realm by the spirit author André Luiz. A series composed of precisely 13 books, and the book Evolution in Two Worlds is the 10th of them. For the time being, we don't have its translation in English, but soon we will. So we are bringing it to you firsthand in the English language. We want to know more about the way the book was composed, because it was put together in a very peculiar and unique way. The making of the book is such that while one of the mediums, Francisco Cândido Xavier, was located in a city named Pedro Leopoldo in Minas Gerais, Brazil, Waldo Vieira was located in another city, Uberaba. And each and every chapter has the dates at the end of it, which is quite unique because you will see the depth of this book, and you'll be quite amazed about the amount of time in which it was put together. Precisely, it started on January 15th, 1958, and ended on June 29th, 1958, which means this book was put together in less than 6 months. Quite a phenomenon. Two mediums, they didn't talk to each other. Every other chapter was received by one of them, and the unity of the language, the vocabulary, and the contents is fascinating. A phenomenon to be studied in itself. This book is also composed of 2 parts. The part of the book that is the first one is composed of 20 chapters. And it basically talks to us about one of the most important parts in our body, which is not understood yet on earth, which is the perispirit, or the spiritual body. Plus, on the second part, chapters in which he talks about the issues of life in general. Many people, when they heard about this book, they hear that this book is put together to bring science, religion, and philosophy together. But is that the real goal of the book? We're going to ask Emmanuel, the mentor of Chico Xavier, the reasons why this book was put together by André Luiz and was allowed by this group of enlightened spirits to bring about a new knowledge on the planet Earth. Come back with us and we'll tell you more about what Emmanuel and André Luiz tells us on the objective of this book. Welcome back. Here we are to discuss more about one of the most fascinating books in humankind's history. Evolution in Two Worlds. Unique, deep, truly consoling. Few people understand the depth of it. Few people actually have time to sit down and study it. And now we have time together to unfold the teachings of this fascinating book and understand more about life, ourselves, and the goal, the reasons why we're here. We are now going to ask the mentor of Chico Xavier why André Luiz was allowed to bring the depth of the information that we find in this book. If we go to the preface of the Spirit Emmanuel, in his annotations he says, "For the longest time, humankind on earth has talked about the spiritual body in different names. The Egyptians named the spiritual body Ka. The Greeks, the ancient Greeks, named it Eidolon, and through the evocation of the Sibyls, they talked about this spiritual quintessence body. Paracelsus talked about the sidereal body, and Baraduc talked about the summod. So what André Luiz is bringing to us is not new to humanity. The fact that we have a quantum body, as Deepak Chopra recently mentioned to us. Yes, we have an energy body that we don't quite understand. And that's probably the body we need to understand all the more, because it's the true vehicle of the soul, also in the afterlife. So Emmanuel brings to us the following annotation. He mentions that the spirit author, André Luiz, seeks in this book only to awaken in us the notion of immortality. He especially highlights to the incarnate friends the very spirit as living form of the own human individual, which presides with the guidance of the mind, the dynamics of the cellular cocoon in which the spirit, traveler of eternity, remains for some time on earth, in evolutionary work, if not in the hard labor of their own regeneration. So, Emmanuel is telling us that André Luiz brought this book not to show off his knowledge in the afterlife, not to make us be enchanted about the combination of science, philosophy, and religion, which deserves an admiration on our side, but the true purpose is to console ourselves, so we don't lose focus on the precious time that we are giving each and every reincarnation. And it seems that at this transition time on earth, we do have enough knowledge and openness to dig deeper and understand what he's about to tell us. So he says, it is, and he quotes actually St. Paul, mentioning to us that it is sown, the spiritual body is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. This is in Corinthians. So Emmanuel explains this citation in Corinthians, that the word to soul means the phylogenetic evolution of the being. And, in other words, the physical body and the spiritual body as true vehicles of the mind in its ascendant pilgrimage to God. Isn't that fascinating? When we get to know that body, mind, and spirit are interconnected. There's no dichotomy. We are ridding ourselves of a dichotomy that is postponing the true advancement of our souls. With respect to the court, nowadays knowledge brings about the fact that matter and spirit, they are mingling together for a beautiful destination. So we now call in the spirit author in his own note as a preface to the book. He's going to tell you precisely the reasons why he took his time and was allowed to bring this fascinating book to us. Besides many things, he says, we know how to balance the blood circulation to ensure safety of the cardiac cycle, but we ignore how to free our hearts from the jails of shadows in which it lies, often steeped in puddle of tears when not chained to the monster of delinquency. So he keeps telling us that science already tells us in so many ways that we know how to rid our bodies from problems. But how do we do the same regarding to our souls? So then he discloses to us the targeted audience of the book is such. He says, we return to the presence of those who contemplate the horizon between anxiety and fatigue by asking in tears about the end of the trip, with our souls direct to them, the torture of the heart and of intelligence. We aspire to write a simple book on the evolution of the soul in two planes, connected in the cradle and grave, in which it weaves in a path to God. So basically, he's telling that this book came to console. Of course, the Spiritist ideas, they represent the coming back of Jesus on the earth. And as such, the consolation purpose of the book. And he tells the reader, if you do not feel the chill of night on the stormy sea of human trials, numbed in the illusion that makes you mock the truth itself, our reminder in your hands reaches the wrong address. So we're not here for those, this book is not for those who are simply having that cold heart and great intellect. No, the book is here for those who guard the stigma of suffering, asking to the old problems of being and suffering. If you know the cloud that announces the storm and the treacherous vortex of the waves in which you surf, then he invites you, come with us. So thus, come. Come, because the goal of the book is the invitation of André Luiz. Let us study the route of our multi-millenary pilgrimage in time to feel the heat of the flame of our own undying throbbing spirit in eternity, while igniting the fire of hope we see together, lift them in exaltation of joy that God, the Father of the infinite goodness, traced our divine destination beyond the stars. Come and join us for more. Evolution into Worlds. This book, we're studying it together. But we would recommend, as this course is about the major highlights of the book, that you take your time by yourself, with friends, colleagues in the Spiritist Center. Go study the book. Although it's not in English yet, soon it will become. For those who may have it available in Spanish and in English, go study it, because it's a true opportunity. And Portuguese. So, now we are entering Chapter 1. Chapter 1 of the first part is about the cosmic fluid. This chapter will talk about the divine plasma, the co-creation, and how everything was created. Now, let's open a parenthesis here. Some people, they doubt how the many spirits are talking the same language. André Luiz is talking the same language as the spirits who brought the codification of Spiritism. Because he begins this amazing journey on the deepest understanding of our creation and our uniqueness in co-creating our own spiritual body in our lives. By mounting to the very beginning, he goes back, just like Allan Kardec. Question 1 of the Spirit's book. What is God? The supreme intelligence of the universe, first cause of all things. Without this concept, nothing else can be understood. So the true foundation, the divine plasma. And that's what André Luiz tells us. The divine plasma is what is surrounding all of us and within which we are immersed. The cosmic fluid, he says, is the divine plasma, the Creator's breath, or the nervous force of the All-Wise. In that primordial element, constellations and suns, worlds and beings vibrate and live like fish in the ocean. The implications of this concept are such that can make you and I, and all of us here present in both realms of life, feel quite special. Thinking that this matter that surrounds us and penetrates us is the true divine plasma, the breath of God, and we are immersed in His loving arms. How can we then ever feel abandoned? How can we ever then feel that life is not worth living if we are immersed in this divine breath? And the implications of this are such that we get to know why we exist, not only in this reincarnation, but in eternity, in immortality. And as such, we have learned that there are two types of co-creation. We are co-creators. There is a co-creation at a greater plane, and there is one of a lesser plane. We're co-creators. You are co-creator. I am a co-creator. A co-creator because God is the only one that creates. And we create on top of it. Not from scratch though. And as such, he explains that there is a beautiful co-creation at a greater plane. What is it? He says, there are glorious intelligences, what we call guardian angels, illuminated spirits, that take the divine plasma and convert it in cosmic habitations of multiple expressions. We're talking about the formation of the worlds, the planets, the stars. They are precisely creations, co-creations of these glorious intelligences. These worlds or habitations last for millennia and millennia, but they wear out and are finally transformed because only the created spirit can form or co-create, and God is the only creator of all eternity. So that's why people know that planet Earth one day is going to vanish billions of years, so don't worry about it now. But the sun is going to disappear because they are co-creations, like our physical bodies. This physical body is a co-creation of our mind, the soul. But one day it will go back to the soil of the earth, our co-creation. But God's creation is immortal. But they are creating the name of God, creating stellar empires, as André Luiz explains. These are what he calls major architects of the universe that serve in the name of God. And there is what he calls a celestial engineering that balances rotation and mass, harmonizing energy and movement. They are divine representatives of God, and they are in charge of keeping the balance, the movement, the harmonizing energy, and everything else. For example, he says, look at our galaxy. We think it's immense, but as you can see in this picture, our sun is just a small star in the billions and trillions of stars in our own galaxy. And let's consider our galaxy a city. If it is a city, then our planet is what? A house in the city. And he says, using far-reaching instruments, like telescopes, from our study room, in the spirit realm, he's saying, we realize our home is not the most humble, but innumerable others outperform its expression of magnitude and beauty. We're not the only ones living in the universe. Why would it make sense that we are living on the planet Earth in such a way that we would be the only ones in the universe? Earth is one of them. And then he compares to what today we can tell are these other beautiful stars. The Betelgeuse, the Canopus, the Arcturus, and the Antares. Look at the sun. It's a dot compared to the Arcturus and to the size of Antares. Our sun is marvelous, but there are many others in the universe much larger and bigger. What for? Who is there? These are questions for our study too. And then for us to understand co-creation, he needs to mount back to the inside of the atom and explain that nothing is by chance. It's very childish on us to believe that there is chance. There's no chance. There's always an everlasting order. And he says, under the guidance of these divine superior intelligences, atoms foregather in immense beehives under spiritually directed pressure of electromagnetic waves intra-atomic spatial areas are controllably reduced without losing motion, so they become dense nuclear mass, from which are sculpted planets in whose bosom celestial monads find appropriate cradle for development. I know you are going to say, Vanessa, it's a lot of knowledge. And I tell you, you're right. Because the more elevated the spirits are, the more they can summarize the whole idea for us. And here we have, he's saying that the order is such in the universe that God sends this divine superior intelligence, his own representatives, to even control the atomic forces in such a way that their thoughts are kindly and compassionately controlling everything so we can live. And they're sculpting planets so the seed of the souls, which he calls here the celestial monad, as the seed of the spiritual principle, will be, these habitations will serve as cradles for them. What a beautiful and marvelous revelation. So he mentions more than that. The light and heat are also under the influx of these spiritual intelligences. And he says, the worlds or fields of development of the soul. Let's pause here. Pause. He redefines worlds. Worlds as fields for our development of the soul. So you're living on earth. Not to have a better house or better car, or better degree or beautiful beauty, etc. But to develop your soul. So why develop my soul? How can we do this better? This is the focus for living here. Developing our soul. And he says, with its various tracks of varied expression of vibration and to the influx of the spiritual tutors, these worlds are cherished by rays of light and heat, not to mention forces of other nature that are sent by the cosmic space onto the earth and human beings in order to assure them stability and existence. So this is the news we tell you now. The news is such that when we study these things, we get to know that nothing in this universe is by itself. It's always guided and protected and watched by these loving intelligences. So you see, even light and heat, he's saying, they are a byproduct of their guardianship. Did we understand that? Light and heat are a byproduct of this pure thoughts transmission. And he talks about two different types here. One that comes from the spiritual tutors. So you have a tutor, I do as well. And other energies that come from the cosmic space. This is very special because we need stability and we need to live on the earth or in the universe, but not alone. Again, if you feel alone, this book is telling us clearly, we are never alone. We're always surrounded and guided and protected by these loving minds. Think about it tonight, or the next morning, or in the afternoon. We're loved. We are protected. And no matter if you walk and fall, stand up, try it again, because we're never abandoned. There's a big plan for all of us. And he says finally that there is a co-creation in a lesser plane. What is it? It's about us. We're not co-creators in a greater plane because we can barely build houses and buildings. But there are other types of co-creation. In this case, they say that we assimilate the corpuscles of matter with our own spiritual energy, thus forming the perispirit. He is going to call the perispirit or spiritual body in this book also by the name psychosomatic vehicle. Why does he say this? Physio-psychosomatic vehicle. Because our spiritual body, you'll get to know more, has its physiology, its anatomy, and it's connected to our minds. it's going to receive the imprinting of our minds. We are creating our spiritual bodies. We cannot blame on anybody else for the disturbances we experience, because we are the creators of it, the co-creators. And He unfolds more. What is to co-create in a lesser plane? Civilizations that encompass the incarnate and the discarnate civilizations of the world. Co-creations of ours. These are agglutinations of short duration in their microcosm, and there are people who want to build cities that will live forever. They don't know about the spiritual laws of life, because the spiritual laws of life tell us clearly that whenever we co-create, it doesn't last forever, because co-creators do not have the power to make things last forever. Unless we talk about virtues, but we're talking about the material realizations of it. They also form the darkened infernal purge generated by unbalanced or criminal minds in the lower and abysmal circles. So he's talking about co-creation of beautiful things, cities, civilizations, but the co-creation of the living hell on earth. For example, when we create wars, we're co-creating in a lesser plane to the negative part of it, to the unhealthy part of it. But when we are taking care of a non-profit organization creating it, that's a co-creation to the positive, to the healthy. Co-creation. You're a co-creator. I'm a co-creator. We are co-creators. And finally, as we wrap up this chapter, we prepare yourself for the next one, when we're going to dig deeper on the physiology of the spiritual body.